Their cute, cuddly and cloned.Delightful little macaques Zhong and Hua are identical, despite being born 2 weeks apart. In a world first, Chinese scientists have created identical copies of a primate using a single individual's DNA, though campaigners warned it was a stepping stone to the creation of human clones. Asked whether the same method could be used on humans, Dr. Mu-Ming Poo, of the Shanghai research team, said, "Yes. A macaque monkey is a primate species, humans are primates, the technical barrier is now broken." So could scientists rustle up an unbeatable squad of Lionel Messis from a test tube? Could geniuses such as Albert Einstein one day be replicated to guide humanity to sunlit uplands? Or might evil triumph in a similar way to the 1978 movie The Boys from Brazil, where Dr. Josef Mengele cloned dozens of young Adolf Hitlers? Here we answer cloning questions to separate science fact from science fiction. Since Dolly became the first cloned mammal in 1996 in Edinburgh, so far it is 23 species, including pigs, rats and cows. Dolly died in 2003 with arthritis, and cancer.Yup, in 2015 Britain, welcomed its first cloned dogs after Laura.She and Richard Remead from Silsden, West Yorks, paid £67,000 for their dead boxer, Dylan, to be replicated in a lab in South Korea. They got 2 identical puppies, which they call Changer and Shadow.Right.Now. The tough bit. How do they do it? Scientists take live cells from a living animal, or one that has been dead for no more than 5 days. Then they implant nucleus DNA, the building blocks of life, from the cells into a blank egg of the same species that has had its DNA removed. The egg is given electric shocks to trigger cell division and is then implanted into a surrogate female animal of the species. How many clones can they make? A limitless number. Biologists now want to produce more monkey clones for research into human diseases such as cancer. Well, while the science is real, it is certainly nowhere near as much fun as the many fictional versions. Here are just a few of the classics on this subject. The Star Wars prequel, released in 2002, revealed that the Republic had created a massive clone army modeled on Jango Fett, father of bounty hunter Boba. The subsequent Clone War then got a spin-off TV series.I and later seasons of the hit cartoon, created by Simpsons mastermind Matt Groening. Professor Farnsworth clones himself and gets saddled with the obnoxious Cubert. Last year's X-Men offshoot catches up with an elderly Wolverine, played by Hugh Jackman. He takes care of a dying Professor Xavier and the pair work together to protect a mysterious girl called Laura. She has the same powers as Wolverine and is a clone created out of his DNA.Never Let Me Go. The 2005 novel by Kazuo Ishiguro tells the story of 3 teenagers at a boarding school who find out they are clones destined to die in adulthood and become organ donors for their original humans. The teens then have to come to terms with their fate, even when To Fall in Love.It was made into a movie in 2010, starring Carey Mulligan, Keira Knightley and Andrew Garfield. In the first 1998 movie based on the Japanese video game, scientists genetically create a new Pokémon named Mewtwo. The destructive creature then steals the world's greatest Pokémon, including Ash Ketchum's Pikachu, and clones evil versions of them. Starring Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, the 2005 film follows a man and woman who escape from a research facility after learning they are clones created for organ harvesting and surrogate motherhood. The 1988 comedy film's plot involves an experiment to create the perfect human clone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the embryo unexpectedly splits and Danny DeVito is born too. 1976 novel by Ira Levin imagines infamous Nazi Dr Josef Mengele cloning 94 Adolf Hitlers. It was turned into a film in 1978 starring Gregory Peck and Laurence Olivier. Reproductive cloning, the copying of a human individual, is illegal in Britain and dozens of other countries. But even in countries where no laws have specifically been passed against it, human cloning has been seen as a no-no. However, the creation of embryonic stem cells capable of being turned into all sorts of other cells, known as therapeutic cloning, is legal under license. This could be used for things like rebuilding bones or concocting new brain cells in order to treat people with Parkinson's disease. When Dolly was born, some suggested that lab-grown transplant organs or human clones that could be farmed for spare parts would follow. Yet investment in therapeutic cloning research has dwindled. Only a handful of countries, including China, Belgium, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Britain, and Singapore, allow the creation of embryos for experimentation. In the US, it is not explicitly illegal. Research boss Dr. Poo, of the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Neuroscience, did admit the macaque's birth was a technical breakthrough in that direction. But he insisted his team had no intention of using their method to create humans. That's fine, but don't some scientists believe a line has been crossed? Some do. Darren Griffin, professor of genetics at the University of Kent, said, "The first report of cloning of a non-human primate will undoubtedly raise a series of ethical concerns, with critics evoking the slippery slope argument of this being one step closer to human cloning." Meanwhile, Professor Robin Lavelle-Badge, a cloning expert at the Francis Crick Institute in London, said, "This clearly remains a very foolish thing to attempt. It would be far too inefficient, far too unsafe, and it is also pointless. Not all the eggheads think it is bad news, however." John Harris, a bioethicist at the University of Manchester and the author of On Cloning, wrote, "While the birth of these monkeys brings us no nearer to human cloning, it is not a prospect we need fear." Campaigners say the cloning of the macaques was cruel for the monkeys and therefore unethical. A total of 260 cloned monkey embryos were implanted in 63 surrogate mothers. Just 4 babies were delivered, with 2 dying soon after their birth. Kathy Guillermo, senior vice president of animal rights group PETA, said, "Cloning is a horror show, a waste of lives, time and money. And the suffering that such experiments cause is unimaginable. Because cloning has a failure rate of at least 90%, these 2 monkeys represent misery and death on an enormous scale." But isn't it a wonderful answer to the loss of much-loved pets? The RSPCA says no. A spokesman said that there was evidence that cloned animals frequently suffer physical ailments such as tumors, pneumonia, and abnormal growth patterns. Dolly the sheep was put down in 2003, aged 6, after being dogged with arthritis and then developing lung cancer. And your mutt might not even look the same. Professor Sir Ian Wilmot, one of Britain's foremost stem cell biologists, explained, "The new pet may not act or even look like the old one. Before they start, owners should recognize that the pet won't be exactly the same. Brought up under different circumstances, its personality would be different, quite apart from anything else." It all depends on movement of cells during fetal development, and that will vary somewhat. So in appearance, and certainly in personality, it is very likely to be different. What about creating a squad of new Lionel Messis? Or bereaved parents seeking to clone a dead child? Professor Xavier said, "You're not going to get the same child by cloning. The chances of a clone being a replica of a lost child are very low. It may look like them, but then it won't behave like them. Then you might be upset and not be very nice to that child." The expert also said that other factors, such as random mutations and changes in DNA activity affected by things like what the mother eats and drinks while a baby is in the womb, affects how children will turn out. It was also said it was too early to tell if the cloned monkeys would be healthy. The professor added, "They seem to be happy at the moment, but we don't know what will happen later." When mice are cloned, they can look perfectly fine for the first few months but then tend to become very obese. He said, "You could clone from a particular efficient soldier, but you can't predict what their behavior will be like. So maybe they would rather go and do flower arranging than fighting. It's the same with an Einstein. You can't recreate perfectly all the conditions in which the first individual was brought up." What about self-obsessed scientists trying to clone themselves in order to achieve immortality? Bioethicist John Harris said, "Possibly such people exist, but their deluded desires, if cloning ever becomes safe enough to use as a form of human reproduction, are doomed to failure." We know from long experience with twins that, while sharing a genome, they remain individuals whose lives, values and beliefs are shaped by their environment and their will. They are not simply duplicates of one another. A would-be adult cloner cannot recreate the same conditions of gestation and birth that he or she experienced. They cannot recreate the education nor the social environment of their own history. Such deliberately created clones will inevitably be far less alike than identical twins.